Hey, welcome in. It's the Arrowhead Addict podcast. Patrick Allen, Matt Verderame, back again. It's Thursday. That means it's time to preview the Chiefs' last game of the regular season against the Broncos. Week 18, the first Week 18 in the history of the NFL. What's that feel like to you, Verderame, as somebody who's really into NFL history? It's been 16 weeks for a long time, or 17 weeks.
First of all, because I love history, I know you're wrong. There was one other Week 18.
Oh, was there?
1993. It was the only year that the NFL had 2 bye weeks. They tried it, and they didn't like it. So there was a Week 18.
Fascinating.
That said, I get the point. I'm kind of just being a dick. No, it's weird. Like, I love football, so I'm happy there's more football. But at the same point, I'm also I'm ready for the playoffs. I'm ready to get there. We've known now, really, since the Chargers game, the Chiefs were going to win the division. Of course, with the Cincinnati game, we have a pretty good idea where they're going to be seated. So I'm ready. I'm ready to get this game going. I got to admit, I'm not thrilled they moved it to Saturday. I kind of just, I am so invested that, in the Chiefs and in the NFL that I kind of like to keep it all on Sunday. And then the rest of my week, I can kind of just be a regular person and relax. And that's not going to happen now with this game on Saturday night. But in one way, if they win, it's nice because then you just sit down Sunday, turn on the Tennessee game, hope for a miracle.
Yeah, it's weird. From a competitive advantage standpoint, it's really fascinating because if you have those early games, like the Chiefs, that if they were on Sunday Night Football, right, they could have the chance to potentially rest their starters if they knew that there was nothing that they could do based on how things played out. So there isn't, ideally all the games would happen at noon, 1 o'clock kickoff, right? Everybody play at the same time and just sort of see how things played out. Unfortunately, that's not the way it goes. There's actually this weird scenario in which with the Broncos and Chargers, and we'll get to that in a minute, they're playing on Sunday Night Football. I think if the Colts were to lose, the Broncos or the Chargers and Raiders could actually, if they purposefully tied, they would both make the playoffs. But if they play it out like normal, one of them will get eliminated. So it's essentially the first playoff game. But that's a sort of weird, wacky scenario that could potentially take place, but won't.
Right. Yeah, it is a playoff game. For the Chargers, if they win, they're in no matter what. If they lose, they're out no matter what. The Raiders do have some weird scenarios. Like if the Colts lose to Jacksonville by some miracle, chaos is going to reign. There's going to be a lot of things at play.
Right.
I will say, if you're a fan of history of football, there's always a game the last week of the year that does not go the way you think it's going to go. And it screws up seeding. Like some team will lose that you go, oh, wow, really? And it screws them. Like a couple of years ago when the Chiefs went to the Super Bowl and the Dolphins beat New England. Like that kind of a thing. Like there's always a game that somebody blows seeding with a bad loss. And we'll see who it is. We'll see if it's on the NFC side. We'll see if it's by some miracle Buffalo loses to the Jets or the Chiefs lose to the Broncos or the Titans lose to the Texans. Like it does happen. Or Indy loses, but it'll be interesting. There will be one game that goes haywire, at least one game.
Yeah.
And everybody goes, wow, that's the stunner. It's just a question of who it is. And by the way, Flapjack City, thank you so much for the very, very generous super chat.
Wow.
I gotta say, I don't know yet if we're gonna stream live for the. I might have a stroke if we do that live.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if we will, and if we do, who's gonna be on it. I'm not sure. We'll keep everybody in the loop on that one. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that yet. But if we do, we'll make sure to get it out to everybody to let everybody know right away.
Yeah, it's fascinating this time of year. And again, thank you, Flapjack. People are like, oh, there's no way the Jaguars are going to win. They're terrible. But I think it's important to remember. And even in this game for the Chiefs, where I think we agree the Chiefs should beat the Broncos. But you got guys out there, this is their last chance to make an impression before the offseason, right? Guys on the Jaguars are like, man, I'm on this terrible team. I need to go out and I need to show out. Maybe a defensive end makes a big play, gets a strip sack, weird things happen. Drew Lock, big stakes for him in this game. I mean, he goes out and has a good game against the Chiefs or would somehow beat the Chiefs. Forget being a starter, right? There's so many guys who played well in a week 17 because they got an opportunity, and then they're a stalwart backup in the NFL for 10 years. They make a lot of money. So there's a lot on the line here in these games for these players. So I know we all have a tendency to say, oh yeah, everybody's making their golf plans and they're packing it in. And maybe if you're a player who's set and established, maybe you are. But if you're coming up for a contract, you're heading into free agency, you're trying to stay in the league, this is your last shot to make an impact. So I think that's one of the reasons why sometimes these weird things happen in the last week of the season.
Yeah, and I also think sometimes, look, teams are beat up at this point too. So, maybe you get a team that just, even if the guys play, they're not 100%. There's always, to me, when you look at the end of the year with teams that are not making the playoffs, there's two types of teams. There's the young team that is hungry, that is trying to build for next year, that is going to play hard. I would use a team like Detroit as an example for that. Like, I think Detroit, now they're playing the Packers this week, so it's irrelevant. The Packers are locked in the 1 seed. But like a team like that, they will play hard. They're trying to build something. They're trying to build a culture. I will say, I think the Texans are going to play hard on Sunday. They've played hard all year. They've got a young team. It's a divisional game like they all are in week 17, week 18 now. They're going to play hard. Now, the Giants are an example of a team on the other side of that will lay down like dogs. They don't care. It's clear they just want to go home. They've been like that for a month. Like, I remember Andy Reid's first year at Kansas City, the Chiefs went and played Washington. And it was a miserable game in the snow.
Yep.
And Washington was out of the race. And I've never in my life seen a game where more guys made business decisions, where it was just guys missing. There were like multiple runs in that game where Jamal Charles broke like 6 tackles. So I do think for the Chiefs, I do think you're going to get a game where Houston gives it everything they have. I just don't know if that's going to be enough to beat a Tennessee team that knows, hey, look, if we even play a decent game, we're going to be the number 1 seed.
Right. Yeah, a lot on the line. And before we get into all that, we have a really special announcement. We're super excited about this.
Yes.
We are now, the Arrowhead Addict podcast is now sponsored by KC Beer Co., the Kansas City Beer Company. Local. It's the largest locally owned brewery in Kansas City. We've teamed up with Steve and Katie over there. They've been awesome. They're going to be with us as a sponsor, keeping the show going all the way through the NFL draft. Lots of exciting things to come. But I mean, this is you guys know, right? You watch this podcast after those games. We get into these post game shows. We're drinking. We got a beer in our hands, and man, I'm just so excited to have these guys on board, Verderame.
Absolutely. We've gone out to Kansas City many times before and always make the Kansas City Beer Company a stop. And I think, they have so many different interesting varieties, different flavors to, German beer. I've always been a big fan of the Hefeweizen. That's always kind of my go-to. It's smooth. It's great. But I enjoy the fact that, I think sometimes you go to some breweries around the country and there's like 80 choices, right? Like there's just a million different varieties. At this brewery, which as you mentioned is the biggest locally owned brewery in KC, like they offer select couple choices, 5 choices, 6 choices, and they're great at what they do. So no matter what beer you get, no matter which kind of German style beer you want, it's going to be great because they've worked at it for years and years and years and years, and they're not trying to do 90 new different flavors. It's like, this is what we do. We're great at it. Pick any of them. It'll be good. I've had many experiences there. I love it. So excited they're on the podcast now with us. And I would really implore anybody, look, if you want to support us, support them, because you're doing one and the same.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're out at the store, and I'm a big fan of the Dunkel, by the way. Love me some darker beer.
Yeah.
You know, it's one, obviously it's you're supporting Kansas City. But like when you're out at the store, it's available all through Kansas and North and Western Missouri. Like you see it and you buy it, and give them a shout out on Twitter and let them know that you heard about their product on our show. That's another great way you can support us, even if you don't drink, or if you want to buy a gift for a friend or something like that.
Yeah.
At KC Beer Co. It would really help us out to let them know that we've kicked off this campaign with them, that you heard about KC Beer from our show, and that you're going to go out and maybe check out the product on our endorsement. And there's a lot more to come with KC Beer. We're just getting this thing started, so it's going to be excited. And maybe someday, at some point, maybe Verderame and I and Matt Connor and Sterling, maybe we'll all be down there at the brewery, and you can come and catch a live show of the Arrowhead Addict podcast. Wouldn't that be cool? So we'll get into some Chiefs talk here. But again, thank you to KC Beer for the support of this podcast. It is a huge milestone for us. Okay, let's get into the game. Before we do, I just sort of switching gears here, a little bit of a somber moment here. Former Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator Greg Robinson has died at the age of 70. I don't know if you had seen that yet, Verderame.
Yep.
Super sad. They said he just died of natural causes. Much too young for my taste at the age of 70. But obviously, hugely influential during the Dick Vermeil years. Coached some really great defensive players on those teams. So he'll certainly be missed. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. And just another reminder, my dad's 64, and it's just a reminder to grab onto your loved ones and take advantage of the time that you have. So we're just, sorry for Greg's family and, wishing them all the best. All right, let's get into football here. So I want to start with the playoff scenarios. And it's not that I don't think that this game against the Broncos is important. It certainly is. The Chiefs still have a chance to get the 2 seed. That is big because they're going to have to play on Wild Card Weekend. But you want that AFC Championship game to happen at Arrowhead. And if the Titans end up with the 1 seed and they don't win in that first week of the playoffs, the Chiefs are in the catbird seat to host the AFC Championship game again. So, but I want to talk about some of these scenarios because there's some wacky stuff out there, Verderame. If it's all chalk, right? And the best way to do this, by the way, and you've heard Verderame talk about it on the podcast a lot, same with me, is to head over to ESPN, just Google the playoff machine, NFL playoff machine.
Yep.
And you can, because there's so many different scenarios that just listing them all out, you're gonna go cross-eyed trying to figure it all out. But if you kind of want to see like what happens if the Raiders win, what happens if the Jaguars somehow do, beat, like you can see how it all plays out. If it all goes chalk, right? If the Chiefs beat the Broncos like you think that they're supposed to, if the Bills beat the Jets, the Patriots beat the Dolphins, the Titans beat the Texans, the Colts beat the Jaguars. And then, as we know, we think the better team here, definitely the Chargers are better than the Raiders. They go to Vegas and they beat the Raiders. The Chargers are coming to Kansas City.
Right.
And that's a tough matchup. We've talked about it. But there are some scenarios here where things could get wacky, right, Verderame?
Yeah. Well, look, a lot of it starts with the Colts losing. If they lose, then you start getting into a whole lot of things where the Steelers can get in the playoffs. And if the Steelers get in, they would be going to the number 2 seed, which assumingly would be the Chiefs. The Ravens could still get in, depending on how things shake. Like there's a whole lot of. I think the way it works is the Ravens would have to win their game against Pittsburgh. And then it's like Indy's got to lose. And I believe it's that the Raiders have to win, I think is how that would work out. So there's a lot of stuff at play. Right? The only things we know right now for sure, Tennessee won its division. Kansas City won its division. Cincinnati won its division. Bengals have already come out and said that they're not going to play everybody. Okay, so they're probably going to lose against Cleveland. Although Cleveland is also banged up, so who the hell knows? But I would think
Baker Mayfield's not playing.
Right.
That might be a good thing, depending on your point of view.
I was going to say, seriously, I'm not even kidding. I think it is. Buffalo has to play because it needs to win its division. That division is not wrapped up, but it will be if the Bills beat the Jets.
Yeah.
So I would expect that they'll play hard. Now, the Bills and Jets are playing at the same time, 4:25, as the Pats and the Dolphins. The Patriots kind of are compelled to play hard because if by some miracle the Jets win, then the Patriots win the division if they beat Miami.
Right.
New England's already in the playoffs, so no matter what. So, and so is Buffalo, by the way. They're both in the playoffs. It's just a matter of who's going to win the division, who's going to be the wild card. So if the Chiefs end up being the 2 seed, the teams they can play include Pittsburgh and Baltimore, but that has to have an Indianapolis loss. Okay.
Yeah.
They can play the Raiders, although to get to that, there's a lot of weird stuff that has to happen. Like it's very unlikely they'll play the Raiders. They can play the Patriots, although again, unlikely. If they're the 2 seed, it's extremely likely it'll be either Indianapolis or the Chargers.
Right.
If the Raiders beat the Chargers, it's probably going to be Indianapolis. And if the Chargers win, it will almost certainly be the Chargers. So that's kind of where it all falls.
Yeah.
I have been on the record for weeks saying I think the Chargers be the toughest matchup in the playoffs for the Chiefs. And so I think if you're a Chiefs fan, you're sitting there rooting for the Raiders because I get it. Jonathan Taylor's awesome. Colts are very well coached. All those things are true. They have no quarterback. They do not have a weapon that scares you. Their corners, Kenny Moore is awesome in the slot. The corners on the outside are not great. Like, to me, I would far rather see Indianapolis than see Herbert come in there with Allen and Williams and Eckler and a coach who, all kidding aside, like, would you be shocked if they got the ball and it was 4th and 4 at their own 28-yard line, they just went for it? Like,
yeah,
it's a weird game. It's a game where I could see the Chiefs blowing the Chargers out. I really can. I can also see a game where the Chiefs lose to them because it's just bizarre. Like, I am a big fan of predictability in sport. Like, I'd rather play a team that I know what they're going to do than play a team that, like, you have no idea. I think the Chargers are easily the scarier matchups.
Here's a weird scenario, but it's not crazy. And that is, if no matter pretty much what else happens, there's probably some scenarios in there. But if most everybody who wins that you expect to win is a team that's been playing a little bit of scrappy football recently, and that's the New York Jets. They're not good. The Bills should kill them. It's in Buffalo. But the Jets just went there and put a scare into Tom Brady and the Bucks a week ago. The Jets beat the Bills. Buffalo loses the division, assuming that the Patriots win. And they drop all the way down to the 7 seed, and they're coming to Kansas City. So that is not ideal either for the Chiefs. I wouldn't want to see Buffalo or the Chargers in the first round in the wild card round for Kansas City. So, I mean, really what you want is you want the Texans to win, right? So the Chiefs don't have to play at all, and that's it. But that's one that's like it. There's some weird matchups where 3 or 4 things need to happen for the Chiefs to play so-and-so, but that's one where it's pretty cut and dry. Patriots win, Jets beat the Bills, and the Bills have had some shaky. Nobody's playing great football right now. Everybody's been a little bit shaky in the last couple weeks, and so really, I think anything could happen. But what we're probably looking at here is, unfortunately, the Chargers coming to Arrowhead in the wild card round.
I'll say this though, I'm not ready to go there for one reason. That Chargers team they are the weirdest fucking team in football.
Yeah.
They have games where you watch them and you're like, they could win the Super Bowl. Like, they are just offensively a juggernaut. Herbert's great. Staley's an awesome coach, like the whole deal. Then you watch other games, a la at Houston, where Rex Burkhead looks like Walter Payton and they can't do anything, and Herbert throws a pick 6, and you're just like, oh, yeah, right. It's the Chargers. Like, anything's on the table.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if the Raiders beat them. I would not be surprised in this game. Like, Waller's healthy and playing. Jacobs looks like he's going to give it a go. And that's right, Cheetah Freak, an F-bomb on the preview show. It's the end of the year. We're getting amped up. I would not be surprised. And that game's in Vegas. That place is going to be going nuts. I mean, you got to realize this is a franchise in the Raiders that has gone to the playoffs once since 2002. Like, it's like a Super Bowl for them. It's a huge, huge game. If you said to me you got to bet your life, I would take the Chargers because I think they're better. But the Chargers are just so weird. They're just weird. Like, anything is possible. Anything's possible. And by the way, Epic Canadian, I see in there. I love Toronto. I've been there a half dozen times. It's my favorite city in the world to visit.
Great city. Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely love it. It's just someone who loves hockey. Toronto is, it's like it calls me home. And then I see Nathan asking, would you purposely lose to Denver to get the 3? Because then you're getting the Raiders or the Colts. I wouldn't, and here's why. Because if they lose that game, then they'd probably have to go to Buffalo in the second round. I would rather play it out. Like, I'm a firm believer in if they're good enough to get to the Super Bowl, and let's be real, like, even though the Chiefs lost to Cincinnati, they're the betting favorite in every book in America to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. You have to have confidence that, look, they're the best team. Like, they have to just go out and win these games. You know, I found it interesting. Ben Baldwin does great work on Twitter. I believe works at The Athletic now. Got to know Ben a little bit. Really, really smart guy. He does all these different analytical charts. And while I'm not always the biggest analytics guy in the world, I think some of it's interesting based on markets and different things. The Chiefs, even after losing to the Bengals, are overwhelming favorites to win the AFC. So I'm a big believer in, look, you win on Saturday, get at least. Plus, could you imagine if you purposely lost that game and then Tennessee loses?
Right.
Oh my God. You'd be like, what did we do? Like,
well, and then you're still facing, like, even if you get an easier first round matchup, now you're probably going to have to go on the road, right? You don't want that. You want to be at Arrowhead.
No. You want to win in Denver. And you know what? Look, I don't think Tennessee's going to lose, but would I be like totally shocked if they lost? No, I'd be surprised. I would be surprised. I don't think it's going to happen. But Tannehill's not a great quarterback. And they don't have Henry. Like, listen, could I see it happening? Like, could I see a game where Davis Mills throws for 250 and 2 touchdowns? And, you know, maybe the Texans get a play on special teams or something and they win the game, 20-17. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not sitting here predicting that, but I could see that. I mean, listen, we've seen weirder things happen in the NFL. Did anybody think the Chargers were going to go to Houston when Houston had 25 guys on the COVID list and score 41 points? Like, it's just, you have to play it out Saturday to win. And then you hope. And yes, Cheetah Freak, they did activate Henry last night, but he's not expected to play on Sunday. It's more of a move to start his clock to play him in the playoffs. So that's where I see it. I think if you're the Chiefs, like, you go. Plus, you don't want to go in there losing 2 straight. Go in and pound Denver. Get right, and then okay, if we got to play wild card weekend, fine. And if not, awesome. But and I agree too with Epic. Look, put some pressure on Tennessee. You never know. You just don't know in these games, man. You don't know. What if, and I'm not, obviously, of course, I'm not hoping for this. What if Tannehill got hurt the first play of the game? Like, it's football. Guys get hurt, man. Things happen. Like, what if,
and their receivers have a tendency to get banged up.
Brown, right. I mean, again, of course, you don't hope it, but like, what if Tannehill rolls out third play of the game? Somebody hits him, he rolls his ankle, he's out for the game. Like, then what? I mean, I got to be honest. Does anybody even know who the backup quarterback is in Tennessee? I don't even know who it is. I should know that. That's awful. Don't tell my boss is a fan side. I should know that off the top of my head, but I don't. But that's the point, right? Like, you don't know. So you win that game. And then, hey, look, if Tennessee wins by 30, fine. That's what you expected anyway. And if they don't, and you get a Fitzpatrick in New England moment, well, then all the better.
Right. Yeah. It's, I'll tell you what, depending on how things go with the Browns and Bengals game, that's an interesting one to me because The Bengals, if they lose that game, could drop down a seed.
It'd be the 4th seed probably.
Yeah. If the Browns win, the Bengals drop down and they end up playing the Patriots in the first round. I think that's ideal. I would not want to. I know that Belichick and he's done well against Mahomes, but like I would rather the Patriots take care of Jamar Chase. And if there's anybody who's going to scheme up something crazy, and with that defense as well, rattle Joe Burrow, his first playoff game, they're riding hot, they're feeling themselves, and all of a sudden they run into the Belichick buzzsaw. He throws something at him that he's never seen before, which Belichick is great at. We've seen him flummox Mahomes for a half. Well, what if the Bengals can't get out of it? Then all of a sudden, New England's moving on. You get Jamar Chase out of the playoffs.
Right.
That would be great. Of course, then you would probably end up seeing the Patriots potentially. So it's really interesting. It's really fascinating game, that Browns Bengals game, that how it ends up affecting those matchups.
By the way, as Lucas, a noted watcher of the show, is pointing out, Logan Woodside is the backup in Tennessee. I don't feel so bad that I didn't know that now.
Okay.
All Logan the reason, Woodside. Like you play the game on Saturday.
Yep.
Because if Logan Woodside gets involved, like the Chiefs' chances of a 1-seed sky, like you don't know. And Doyle, listen, I do appreciate you checking in, but man, listen, believe me when I say this, people fear the Chiefs. My job is to talk to people around the league, not just about the Chiefs, but my point is, like, if you take a straw poll of people in the NFL, they would mostly tell you they think the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC. Like, not everybody. Some people would say, I like Tennessee with only 2 home games potentially, but the Chiefs. Look, I will say one thing about the game on Sunday. No, Doyle, believe me, they still do, man. Like, I'm not just saying that. Like, if you lined up every NFC playoff team and said, who do you not want to see in the Super Bowl, they'd be the answer. Like, overwhelmingly, they'd be because you have to think about it this way, man. Like, what if the Chiefs had won that game in Cincinnati by 3 points, right? Like, would you still feel that way? No, you wouldn't, right? Like, you probably would. I mean, I'd be shocked if you did. Like, if Pringle runs that kickback and there's no penalty and they win that game, they're sitting there in 9 straight. They're the ones everything's wrong. Like, teams in the NFL aren't going to change their feelings on the Chiefs because the Chiefs had a game where they crapped the bed for a half of football. That's not the way it works. I would say this. Look, certainly, by the way, of course, you're entitled to how you feel, but I'm just saying, talking to people in the league about what they expect to see in the playoffs and different thoughts they have. Matt Lombardo of Fanside actually wrote a really good column on Wednesday, and he talked to people around the league. Like, do you think Tennessee's going to get there? And one person in the league flat out was like, no, the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the team. Now, if you want to make the argument that maybe the Packers are better than them or somebody else in the NFC, that's fine. I think the Packers are the favorite to win the Super Bowl right now. But I'm a big believer, and you don't worry about Super Bowl until you get there. Like, just worry about your own conference. Because you're only going to play one team out of the NFC, right? Like, you're not going to see Green Bay and Dallas and Tampa and you're seeing one of them.
Right.
To get there.
Yeah.
So you just have to worry. I don't even worry about the whole playoff field in the AFC. You just play who's in front of you. That's it. You don't have to play all 6 teams. You have to play one of them each weekend. That's it. So it doesn't, you don't have to worry about who do you play and then who do you play for the following week if you win. Like, that's it. It's like the year the Chiefs went to the Super Bowl, right? Everybody was talking about Lamar. He's an undisputed MVP. He's the first guy who was every vote, unanimous.
Yep.
Didn't win a playoff game.
Never saw him.
Didn't win a playoff game. So
Yeah.
who cares? They never had to play him. They never had to play him. And I think that, that's the point I'm driving at is we're going to find out here in a couple days who the Chiefs are going to play on Wild Card Weekend if they play on Wild Card Weekend. That's the only team you got to worry about. Then if you win that game, I agree. I think the Bills are the biggest threat to the Chiefs in terms of they're the second best team in the AFC, in my opinion. But if the Chiefs play the Chargers, there's a good chance the Bills are going to play the Colts. I could see the Colts going in there and win. Like, who knows? I think I would pick the Bills, even though the Colts killed them earlier in the season. But you don't know, and you can only play who's in front of you. You don't have to worry. That's the beauty of the playoffs. You don't have to worry about every other team. You only have to worry about the team you're playing that weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. The Chiefs just need to win a handful of games, and they'll be back in the Super Bowl. And, look, I didn't want him to lose. I wanted him to win the 1 seed, but they were on quite a winning streak. And, you always have that thing. Maybe it's good to get that loss out of the way and then just get right back on another winning streak because they're going to have to win. They would have had to have won a lot of games in a row, which is really hard to do in the NFL. I think it would have been 13 in a row, roughly, to keep that going. All right, let's talk about this game that we have in front of us here because it is an interesting game. The Chiefs pretty much did a great job of handling the Broncos last time. They didn't. Now, this was back when the Chiefs offense still wasn't kind of firing on all cylinders. So
Right.
it was a game where the defense was still playing well. The Broncos are very, very impotent on offense. And the Chiefs defense just shut them down, but it was a frustrating game to watch. And look, the Broncos defense is good. I think they're ranked 9th in the NFL. Their pass defense is very good. So the Chiefs can't go in there and monkey around, right? They can't start turning the ball over, doing things like that. But I've got, as I tend to do for these shows, I've got some interesting stats here for you. The Chiefs, as we all know, I think, have won 12 straight games against the Broncos. That's the longest winning streak versus a single opponent in franchise history.
Wow.
The Broncos, listen to this one. The Broncos are 3-8 versus AFC teams this season. Only the Jaguars have a worse record, minimum 10 games versus the AFC.
Wow.
And here's another great one. Patrick Mahomes is 12-0 in his career on the road versus the AFC West, which is tied for the second longest divisional road winning streak at any point in a career since 1970. So that should make you feel kind of good about the game on Sunday.
That's I guess I didn't know that's like impossible. He's never lost a road game in the division.
No.
Jeez, okay. I did not know that. All right, well, look, I mean, the Chiefs have never fared well against Fangio's defense. Fangio's always given them issues. Now, they beat them every time, but they struggle to score against that defense. They've never, I'm just trying to go through it in my head, but I don't believe they've ever scored 30 points against a Fangio defense, except last year in Denver, they did, but they had like 2 scores that weren't offensive. Like Sorensen had an INT return for a touchdown, and then Pringle returned the kick for a touchdown. So the Chiefs have never been great offensively. Now, the flip side is Denver cannot score a point against Kansas City. So that's always kind of been the rub, right? Like, all right, yeah, Denver doesn't play great offensively, and that's kind of the killer in these games. Look, they've already ruled 3 guys out. We're not even to the end of the week. Bridgewater went on IR, concussion. Hopefully he gets healthy here in the offseason. Dalton Reisner, local Kansas State product, he is out. He has an elbow injury. He was placed on IR, as was Kareem Jackson, their safety, who was placed on IR. So all those guys are out for this game. Patrick Surtain has not practiced the first couple of days. He had a calf injury. Word out there is that it's more likely than not that he doesn't play, which would be big. He's the best corner they have. Excellent young rookie. So, they're without some guys in this game. Locke's, I'm sure going to play, but he's beat up the shoulder injury. Melvin Gordon's got a hip injury. He's been limited all week. Noah Fant's got a quad injury, limited all week. Javonte Williams, the running back, who was great in Kansas City, he's been limited all week with a knee injury. Like they're missing a lot of guys in this game. If we're being honest about it. So, look, this is a game you gotta win this game. Like, you got to go in there. I don't even care. It's one of these games where they kind of sleepwalk a little bit and it's ugly and whatever. Like, fine. Look, because they're human beings. The Chiefs want to get through this game and get to the playoffs. They do. Yep. I mean,
healthy.
But because of what happened in Cincinnati, there's going to be an emphasis on let's play well, let's win the game. Also, what would be nice is if the Chiefs ever could just blow them out. Maybe you start yanking starters at halftime. Like if. The one thing you never know with these games is how hard does Denver play? Is it business decision central where it's like, look, man, I don't want to get hurt for the offseason. I'm not diving around. Like, I'm not, we lose by 25 today. Who cares? I just want to get the hell out of here. So, and I will say this too. If the Chiefs lose to Drew Lock, I'm going to have a meltdown like no other on Saturday night. Like
it's going to be bad.
He is awful. He is an
he's
awful quarterback. You cannot lose to that team. Yeah.
What is the plan for the Chiefs along the offensive line? Now, as we enter this game, the Chiefs are reasonably healthy. I mean, about as healthy
They
as
are.
you could hope at this point in the NFL season, a long season. Their injury report, on Wednesday, Clyde did not practice, but they think he'll be okay. I wouldn't be surprised if they just keep him out of this game. They probably feel pretty good about their running back
Yeah, I
situation.
wouldn't
Let him
play
rest
him.
up.
Like, for
No.
what?
Yeah. Niang's done for the year, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Orlando Brown has that calf injury. He was a full participant in practice. Hitchens was a full participant in practice. L'Jarius Sneed, Derek Nottie, all full participants are still a banged up. That's
fine.
it.
Yeah.
What are the Chiefs doing? What are they going to do along the offensive line? Is Mike Remmer still on IR?
Yes.
I think he is.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's going to be, look, as long as I would expect that Brown will play.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, you just put Wiley at right tackle.
Yeah.
I will say this, and this got lost on Sunday, and rightfully so. There's a million things we had to get to. The Chiefs did an unbelievable job up front in that game. Like, the Bengals have a very good defensive line. Hendrickson has 14 sacks, a Pro Bowl. They have a couple other guys with 7+ sacks in that line.
Yeah.
The Chiefs obviously did not know Brown was going to tweak his calf before the game. So it's not like they got to practice all week, right? Then Niang, I think it was the first drive of the game, got hurt. So you're down both tackles. Kyle Long is not active for the game. Remmers is on IR. Like that, most teams, that is beyond a disaster. The Chiefs are like, all right, Tooney's moving outside against Hendrickson and did a great job. And then Allegretti came in and was just killing guys. Like,
yeah.
Look, the Chiefs deserve a lot of credit for that. I know it came in a loss. I get all that. That was a great job by the Chiefs and by Andy Heck, their offensive line coach, to have them ready and able to do that. That's hard.
Yeah.
That is a really, really difficult position to be thrust into. And the Chiefs handled it flawlessly. If you watched that game and didn't know guys were out, you would have had no idea. They were excellent.
And if you listen to the Tuesday show or the when it came out Wednesday, I think, with Matt Connor and Sterling, Matt Connor made a really great point because we've been all excited about Smith and Creed Humphrey and all of these things. Joe Tooney this season had played with a broken hand,
unbelievable,
didn't miss a beat, right? Then slides over to left tackle after this injury. And you didn't know that there was really a problem. We weren't sitting here like, oh man, Tooney's getting smoked. That's what an incredible signing. And I'm just basically regurgitating the points that Matt Connor made. He was this big signing in the offseason, and then the Chiefs, trade for Orlando Brown. What a job by Brett Veach. And what a good position for the Chiefs to be in now, where they're like, okay, look, we've got, like, if anything were to happen again, we've got Kyle Long. Hopefully he's able to play, but he's feel pretty good to have him.
He's just healthy and active.
It's got to feel pretty good to have him in your back pocket, along with Allegretti and Andrew Wiley from a depth position. Do you still wish the Chiefs had Duvernay Tardif now that some of these injuries have happened?
No, I feel fine. I think Allegretti did a nice job, and I think they're good to go. By the way, Cheetah Freak, we did not give out Arrowheads last week because we were all so pissed off at 3rd and 27 and 18 different officiating errors.
Right.
But
good point.
But I will say, I mean, the O-line would have gotten mine for sure. Nobody on the D. Oh, Chris Jones would have. Chris Jones was unbelievable in that game.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Tooney, Humphrey, and Smith, that none of them are Pro Bowlers is just mind-blowing. Like, none of them. Tooney, you can make an argument Tooney's been the best guard in the NFL. Like, really.
Yeah.
Like, you could really make the argument. I know Brandon Thorne, who does really, really good work, and he's a noted guy on Twitter. If you don't follow him, you should. And he's an O-line expert. It's all he really dives into. He believes that Tooney and Humphrey should be all pros, and that Smith might be an all-pro. Like, that's how good they've been. And by the way, I got to tell you, other than Mahomes, because obviously he's just of so much outsized importance because of what the position he plays on, great he is. Their offensive line is the single biggest reason I think they can and have a very good shot to win the Super Bowl. Because that line, like, Mahomes just has all day behind it. And the one thing with them, it's gotten lost a little bit, but lately they're starting to run the ball a little bit more. Cincinnati's a really good run defense. I believe they're 4th going into last weekend. The Chiefs just pounded the ball down the throat when they wanted to. The Chiefs just ripped off runs. And people will say, well, it's because they played a light box against them. Yeah, well, everybody plays a light box against Kansas City. That's the point. Right? Like, and I really believe if the Chiefs play the Chargers in the playoffs, cram it down their throat. That's how, you want to win that game. They can't stop Rex Burkhead. I would just line up and run them over. I really believe that. Like in the playoffs, the Chiefs are gonna. It doesn't matter if Mahomes throws for 300 yards. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you need to be able to. You have to. How can you win the game? I mentioned it earlier. Like the playoffs, even more than the regular season. It's all about that game, that moment. You're not holding anything back. I firmly believe you've got this great offensive line in front of you. Think about if you're a defensive line. You want to see any of those guys coming downhill, especially the four to the left side, not to take anything away from Wiley, but Brown, who's massive. Tooney, and it was a great player. Smith, who's not only great, one of the nastier linemen I can remember the Chiefs ever having. And Humphrey, who you can tell that he was a wrestler at one point. He's a great guy with leverage and technique and everything. Like,
great career.
Put the ball in their hands at times and just run it behind them.
Yeah.
And then get a team to pull a safety up and hit him over the top with Hill. I really, and Keith, I agree with you. We've been saying it, but Reed won't do it. But you know what? Lately, they have been doing more of it. Like, I agree that that's never going to be their identity. But if you remember the year they won the Super Bowl, when they played the Titans, the second half of that game, they ran them over. Like, there's that one drive that ended in the fourth quarter, but mostly it was in the third, where they handed off like 8 out of 9 plays and just ran them over. Like, there is something to be said for that. And I think if they play the Chargers, they play the Bills, like, you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to just line up and out physical the other team. I thought there was a lot of good stuff in that Bengals game. Even though they lost, as frustrating as it was between the officiating and 3rd and 27 and Jamar Chase, all that crap, the Chiefs did a lot of good things in that game. Their offense was rolling early. They did everything they wanted to do offensively. They only stopped themselves, which, listen, was a theme earlier in the year. Came back to get them in the second half of this game. I thought defensively, as much as they were not good defensively, they got a lot of pressure on Burrow that entire game. And I thought a lot of times, now look, they had a couple of horrid blown coverages to cost them the game. I thought a lot of their coverage, though, was good. Chase was amazing, but it wasn't like early in the year when they lost to Baltimore, where I was like, God, they couldn't get any pressure. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way. It wasn't like Buffalo and Tennessee where you're like, God, they just were not competitive. It wasn't those things. So I'm not happy about that game. But I do think that if you can take a step back and look at it objectively, there was a lot to take from that game that you go, all right, look, they lost and it stinks. But I do believe context matters. And the Bengals also had to throw for 445 yards and play flawless football, and get a little help from the Chiefs and the men in the black and white stripes at home, and they still won on a last-second field goal. Bengals are one of the best teams in football. Like, that's what it took to beat the Chiefs. That's what it took. The Chargers, as much as I'm gassing them up, look, the only reason they beat the Chiefs in week 3 was the Chiefs turned the ball over 4 times, 3 times in scoring position, and the Chiefs still almost beat them.
Right.
So, and the second time they played, the Chiefs, the Chargers were without some guys as well. I'm not making excuses. The Chiefs did not have Jones, Gay, Snead. The Chiefs had a turnover at the 1-yard line. They had a turnover at their own 2-yard line. They had a turnover at the 35-yard line, their own 35-yard line. They still beat them. Like, the Chiefs can definitely lose, but, man, if the Chiefs play the way they can play, they will win. They will beat anybody they face. I firmly believe that. But, hey, it's a game of chance in the NFL. It's a one-off. It's game 7 every time.
I will say that I think that the thought that I had this week was that I would like to see the Chiefs be a little bit more aggressive. I would like to see them be as aggressive against the teams that they're playing, particularly on offense, as teams are against them. And that's what got them into trouble in that Bengals game was was punting when they shouldn't have punted, taking a field goal when, like, just go for the kill. And I think early in Mahomes' career, Andy was like, they had so much swagger, and they were like, you're not gonna be able to stop us. And they've been a little more conservative at times. Go after these teams. Like, we're the Kansas City Chiefs. We're not kicking field goals. We score touchdowns. We're not afraid of a 3rd and 4 on your side of the field. We're going to pick it up. We've got all kinds of plays for this. And I would like them to see them be a little bit more aggressive. And I hope that in that Bengals game that Spagnuolo learned. I know he said this week, I don't think we're really going to change what we do. But he's smart enough to know that, like, after playing that game, if they see the Bengals in the playoffs, like, look, man, you were getting pressure with 4. So what, like, you tried blitzing this kid. You couldn't rattle him. He's going to be a great quarterback. He doesn't get rattled. He's like Justin Herbert, those guys. So, make him make tough decisions. Start dropping everybody back. Mix things up a little bit. Let Chris Jones and Frank Clark and those boys get after him and make him throw interceptions, because that's one thing Joe Burrow has been prone to do. And so that was an oversight by Spags. He tried it. So I'm glad the Chiefs played the Bengals. I'm not glad that they lost to him, but I'm glad that they got to go up against a good team. And now they know if they run into those boys in the playoffs, they're not messing around with Jamar Chase, and they're, maybe don't leave guys on an island too many times, because you might get burned.
Listen, I firmly believe that what happens in the regular season can be informative in terms of for the coaches, but like I saw the stats circulating. They're 1-4 against AFC playoff teams. Look, first of all, depending on what happens with the Raiders, that may not be true anyway. I don't care. I don't. Like, does anyone really think like the Chiefs aren't a playoff caliber team? Like, look, the year they went to the Super Bowl, they played the Texans and Titans in the regular season, and they got roundhoused by both of them. And then guess what happened? Right? Like, I remember in the regular season against Derrick Henry, I believe he ran for 177. And in the playoffs, he ran for 69 yards, and he ran for 7 yards in the second half of the game. Like, guess what? Playoffs are different. I remember the Texans ran for 200 yards against the Chiefs the first time they saw them. Well, guess what happened? They ran for like 50 yards the second time. The Chiefs hung 51 points on him, and that was the end of that game. Like, it doesn't, to me, none of that crap matters. And on the flip side, the Chiefs killed the Bucs in the first matchup. How'd that go the second time around?
Yeah.
Guys get hurt. Plans change. So Spagnuolo will say publicly, oh, we're not going to change much. If they play the Bengals, of course they're going to play them differently. I mean, they're not going to maybe change the entire scheme of the defense, but they're going to play them differently. They'd be moronic not to.
Right.
And he's one of the best coordinators in football. Like, they're not going to. It's like if you got shut out offensively and said, we'll just do the exact same things. I mean, look, as nervous as any Chief fan may be of playing a playoff game against whoever, right? Like, and you should be nervous. It's a playoff game. It's the Chargers or the Bills or the Titans. You don't think those teams are more nervous? Like, Let's be honest. You think Charger fans are like, man, I really hope we go to Arrowhead and play them in 8-degree weather. I really hope that's what happens. You think the Titans, well, let's be real. Let's just call a spade a spade. You think the Titans want the Chiefs to play them in the AFC Championship game? Of course not. Of course not. They're like, hey, you know what would be great is if Cincinnati gets here, or maybe the Colts. Like, nobody. Now look, all those teams certainly are going to be confident. They're playoff teams. They're good teams. But if you lined all those guys up and said, who would you rather see, the Chiefs or somebody else? I mean, just from Mahomes alone, you'd rather see somebody else. He's the kind of guy, as we all know, you could play him on a day where he's just not going to lose. It's kind of like Rodgers in the NFC, where you just have a game where you're like, yeah, it's pretty much it. He's going to do whatever it takes. Like that. Good night. And
you just saw the Cincinnati Bengals on 4th down with the game almost over.
Went for it.
With a chance to went for it from the 1 yard line when they could have just kicked a field goal. They were like, we do not want to give the ball back to this guy under any circumstances. So this game ahead, and by the way, guys, if you could do us a favor, if you could hit that thumbs up button on the YouTube, that'll really help us get some more people in here. Appreciate that. And by the way, if you want to join, we had a new membership as well during this. The Gaming Bros joined. We're having a blast on the Discord talking football pretty much all day, every day. So if you're interested in being a sustaining supporter of our show, hit that join button, and we'll see you in the Discord, and you get some of the other cool benefits as well. Okay, so in this game in front of us, the Chiefs would be foolish to overlook the Broncos. They just would. There's a lot on the line here. They should win. We all know that. you were talking about running the football earlier. Denver's strength is the pass defense. Would you like to see the Chiefs come out and give them a heavy dose of Derek Gore and Darrell Williams? If not just one, because it's good strategy, but two, I mean, I don't want Patrick Mahomes taking too many hits against this Denver defense the last week of the season. Obviously, you're strategic. You don't totally get away from what you do. But would you like to see him maybe try to shorten the game a little bit, run the football against this team, keep everybody healthy?
Yeah, I don't think it's the worst idea. I mean, get the ball out quick, run the ball. You can't have Mahomes getting killed back there. I mean, and obviously, look, you trust your offensive line to block too. But I think, I would definitely factor in a little bit of that. Like, let's run the ball. If we run the ball successfully, great. Throw the ball out underneath, throw the ball quick, let the receivers make a play. The biggest thing with this game, look, yeah, you want to win this game. You do not want to get somebody hurt. That is the biggest thing. Like, you do not, the last thing they can afford is a big player in this game to go down. Like, I will say this. There's two schools of thought for me. It's either, like you just said, kind of play a little conservative, go that route, or you come out early in that game like we're trying to score 30 in the first half. Guns blazing. Get up by a 20-point lead at halftime and just start pulling guys. Start yanking guys out of the game. I mean, there's a case to be made for that. And by the way, real quick, I just wanted to, because I think history's fun and interesting, and there's a really interesting tie-in with this game. So 2017, Mahomes' actual rookie year, although everybody forgets Sacks, he didn't play. This was his first game at Denver, last week of the year. And it was, of course, week 17 back then. But do you remember who the starter was for Denver?
Was it Brock? Was Brock still there?
Paxton Lynch.
Oh, Paxton Lynch. They've had so many mediocre quarterbacks. I can't keep them all straight.
Mediocre's doing a lot of work there for Paxton Lynch. And, of course, Mahomes wins that game. He had a couple crazy throws. They won 27-24. The reason I bring that up, that was his first start. And I don't know how many people know. I'm sure most do. The Chiefs wanted Paxton Lynch the year prior. Like, they, along with Cowboys, were very interested in drafting him. Tried to. Could not get up because Denver outbid him, and got Paxton Lynch. And then the Chiefs, the next year, quote unquote, settled for Mahomes. It goes to show in life, like, how different is the Chiefs franchise and all of our blood pressures if Paxton Lynch goes to the Chiefs?
Yeah.
Like,
if that had happened, we wouldn't be sponsored by KC Beer. We'd be sponsored by Pepto-Bismol.
I'd be sponsored by Clorox. Okay. I mean, you just think about that, but they don't get him. And the Broncos are celebrating because they're excited and hey, everything. And they didn't get him. And they ended up getting Mahomes, and it worked out. And, it's just funny how things can turn. I see the conversation going back and forth. Jack's a Titans fan. Hey, Jack, listen, you should be confident. I tweeted about you guys last night. The Titans are really good. Like, that's really one thing I will say. This narrative that, like, the Titans are somehow like this terrible one seed. Tennessee's beaten Buffalo, Kansas City, the Colts twice, the Niners, and the Rams. Does anyone else have that many impressive wins on their resume? The Titans, look, now, do I believe they're the favorite to win the Super Bowl? No, because the quarterback, and I like Tannehill, but he's underwhelming in comparison to the other big-time guys you're going to see in the playoffs, right? Like, let's just say the Chargers make the playoffs. If I had to rank the AFC quarterbacks, you're putting Mahomes up top, then you're in some order going Allen, Herbert, Burrow. You're getting a Tannehill probably fifth, right? Like, I would put him ahead of Wentz. I'd put him ahead of Mac Jones. I have a lot of respect for the Titans. I really do. I think they're very good. I think they're excellently coached. But I think they have to play a little bit of a certain way to win. Like, I don't think if you're the Titans, they want to get into a game where Tannehill's thrown 40 times, and if they do, it's a problem. That being said, I think the Titans have been underrated nationally with this idea that somehow they're this schlep team that has no business being a 1 seed.
Yeah.
I don't that is a nonsense narrative. Now, but I do think because of the quarterback, they do have to a little bit play away that where the Chiefs can win a variety of different ways. Buffalo, while depending on the quarterback, their defense is very good. I think they can win a little bit in a few different ways. Tennessee, the front four is really underrated. In fact, the front seven is really underrated. But I think if they get into a game where all of a sudden Tannehill's chucking the rock all over creation, it's a little bit of an issue. But we'll see. I think Tennessee's underrated. I do.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. I think, look, man, they've got some players in Tennessee. If they play their best ball, they're a scary team. If they got Derrick Henry, what's up, Maisie? For the audio listeners, Verderame's daughter she has emerged for her usual cameo appearance. Yeah, if the Titans play their best ball, they're scary with Brown and with Derrick Henry on offense. They could go in there and they could beat any team because of those weapons that they have. While it's not all about Tannehill, we've seen a lot of teams with good skill position players go to the Super Bowl with just average quarterbacks and well, not a lot of teams, but we've seen teams do it, right? We've seen Eli Manning win a couple Super Bowls. Joe Flacco win a Super Bowl, so it can definitely be done. All right, let's get to our keys to the game for the Broncos, and I'll start with you, Verderame. What do the Chiefs need to do to win this game, other than show up?
I mean, honestly, this is one of these games. Like, don't beat yourselves. That really is it. Like, you limit the run. Don't give up the big play over the top. Make Locke go 10, 12 plays. And if they do that and they don't turn the ball over in this game, they're going to win this game. I really think the key is make Drew Lock beat you. And the Broncos have some pretty good weapons, but make them beat you. If he's got to throw the ball a ton, he's going to throw the ball into some spots where he shouldn't. He's going to take some sacks. Like I think that's the way to go.
The Broncos are 0-8 since 2020 versus a team entering the game with 7+ wins. Their last such win was in Week 17, 2019 versus the Raiders, which is pretty crazy. They're 19-29 in the Vic Fangio era since 2019, and they've not made the playoffs since 2015. So rough stretch for the old Broncos, which I am quite enjoying, and I hope it continues. What's that line in Willy Wonka? He says, it's the tension. The tension is unbearable or something. I hope it continues. That's me looking at the Broncos. Here's another interesting one I just wanted to get to. Two more points. Kansas City's improvement of a plus 25 in turnover differential from the first half of the season to the second is the largest since the 1989 Lions, who were -11 in the first 8 games and plus 14 in the last 8 games. So that just tells you when people throw those stats at you about how the Chiefs played against playoff teams, throw that stat back at them and be like, hey, listen, the Chiefs played a lot of those teams early in the season and they were turning the ball over like they were getting paid bonuses for it.
That stuff, like, it drives me nuts because it's so without. First of all, I'll put the Packers aside because they played them without Rodgers. The Chiefs earholed Dallas, beat the Chargers, beat the Raiders twice, who, by the way, when they don't play the Chiefs, are 9-5 this year, and killed the Raiders in both games. Yeah. Like, I can't stand those arguments. By the way, they crushed Philly. It was a playoff team in their own building. Okay. Like, yeah, the Chiefs lost some games early, and they did. That's fine. That's fine. I mean, I don't know. Like, does it matter? Does anyone really care? Like, the Titans lost to the Jets. I don't sit there and go, well, the Titans are garbage because they lost to the Jets. Like,
right.
Teams change. Teams evolve. Look, Vegas, and I'm talking the sports books, okay, they don't lie. They are the ones who care about making money and just getting it right, and they have no bias. If the Chiefs play any game against any team in the AFC playoffs, anywhere, they're going to be favored in the game. They're going to be favored. With all due respect to the Titans, if they play them in the AFC Championship game, that game's in Tennessee. As long as the Chiefs are not without like major players or something, as long as they're healthy, they will be favored in that game. That's not my opinion. That's fact. Like, they'll be favored. That doesn't mean they'll win. No, they got to go out and win the football game. But they are absolutely the favorite to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. I mean, that's fact. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's fact. They are the favorites. I'll turn it over to this one quick. You real quick. Chiefs going to win this week?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, Chiefs going to win the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. So that's the analysis we need. Maisie comes in with the opinions.
Set in stone. Look, my keys for this one for the Chiefs. I'm with you. Don't turn the ball over. And then just make Drew Lock play like Drew Lock. Get after Drew Lock on defense. He's been really prone to turning the ball over, especially when he plays the Chiefs. Get a couple turnovers, and I think that's the roadmap. If we want to have this dream of it being Henny time in the second half of the football game, that's what needs to happen. The Chiefs need to score on offense, but they need to get a couple of turnovers so they can stack up points and then just sit guys down on the bench, put Mahomes in his hermetically sealed bubble or whatever that they need to do until the actual playoff games happen.
Oh God, yeah. Like
pick this guy off, get a strip sack.
Yeah. So no, listen, it's just the Chiefs have to just go out and win this game by playing well, and if they do that, then fine. Then you see what happens on Sunday. Worst case, you're a 2 seed. Like, look, as Chief fans, we're so spoiled. Like, that's a really good place. Like, you know, I think sometimes people act like, 2 seed. Oh, it's a disaster. Like, you're a 2 seed. You're gonna get 2 home games and maybe 3, depending on what happens in Tennessee. Like, and look, and yeah, you could get upset. You could lose a game, but you know, this is where I've been thinking a lot about this, and I wanted to give a little bit of quick perspective. Like, the Chiefs have won 6 straight division titles. They've hosted 3 straight AFC championship games, been to 2 straight Super Bowls and won one of them. And yet, I don't think everybody, and I'm guilty of this too at times, like, you don't stop and think about it and appreciate like how ridiculous that is. Yeah. Can you imagine 5 years ago, 6 years ago, if somebody had said to you that's going to be the next half dozen years with this team?
Right.
There's no way. They couldn't win a playoff game most of my life. They were defined as losers my entire life. That's all they were. They were a bunch of losers. They'd get to the playoffs. They'd lose some stupid game. Like, Jack's 3 points, good luck to you. If you hold the Chiefs to 3 points in a playoff game, all the best. But my point, and who knows? We'll see. Maybe they play each other. It'd be a great, fascinating game. But my point is, look, the Chiefs have been unbelievable. Like, this is one of the greatest runs in NFL history. And I think it gets clouded because recently we've seen New England. And New England's just so unbelievable that no one can believe it's even possible. But you put that aside, like, how many teams have had a run like the Chiefs have had? I mean, it's one of the greatest 10 runs in NFL history. It really is. You know, in a 6-year stretch to win your division every single year and go to 2 Super Bowls. No team had ever hosted 3 AFC championship games in a row, including New England. It never happened. This is an obscene run. And look, I'm not taking anything away from New England. New England, to me, is the greatest NFL team I've ever seen. New England also had the advantage of playing nobody every year in that division. Every year. For 20 years, the greatest quarterback in that division, outside of Brady, is Chad Pennington. Like, that's a fact. The best coach in 20 years across 3 teams was Rex Ryan. Like, that's what they – now, look, they got to the playoffs and they dominated, but every year they had a 5-1 or a 6-0 to start out with, and the Chiefs haven't had that. They have Herbert. They had the Raiders the one year with 12-4. They had Rivers. Like, the Chiefs have had to really battle and scrap and win big games in regular season, and they've done it over and over and over. I really do believe, like, the Chiefs, what they've done is unbelievable. And so, look, they might lose in a playoff game. And if they do, by the way, we have nothing to complain about after all that we've seen recently. But would I bet against this football team? No, I wouldn't. I don't give a rip what happened in the fourth quarter in Cincinnati in a regular season game. I don't care. I don't care. I would bet on the Chiefs because everything we've seen for the last 6 years says that when the chips are down, that team is probably going to win the game. And for that reason, and if only for that reason, I feel confident in them no matter who they play and where they play.
All right. Let's get to our Final score predictions. Let us know your final score predictions in the chat. I'll kick us off here. Patrick Mahomes, my last stat nugget for you guys. Patrick Mahomes is 8-0 in his career versus the Broncos. That's the fourth most wins without a loss by a quarterback versus a divisional opponent since 1970. It's going to go to 9-0 this weekend. He's not going to lose to Drew Lock unless, there's some sort of disaster. I think the Chiefs take this one. I'm going to say 24-13. Might be a little closer than some people think, but I don't think it'll feel close. It'll be pretty dominant win.
We're really close in this because I put out my pick prediction this morning, 23-13.
I love it.
I kind of feel the same way you do. I don't think it's because it's like a really hard game. I think it's more one of those things of like the Chiefs just try to take the air out of the ball a little bit, and they're not threatened by Denver scoring. So it's like, look, if it's fine. If we play a little bit of punt, who cares? Like it's okay. I think if the Chiefs have to score more, they will. But I've got it. I've got 23-13. What would you like to interject? What score do you have for the game? What numbers? Chiefs. Just the Chiefs? Okay, that's all that counts. Results all that counts.
That's all that matters.
Patrick Mahomes, yeah. By the way, she wanted to know, Patrick, you were Patrick Mahomes. I explained, no, it'd be Patrick Allen.
Yeah, I'd be a lot better off if I was Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, though, right? He's not bad. Okay, so there you have it. 23-13, 24-13, and then just Chiefs. So we're ready.
We'll see who gets it. Out in the chat, we got Ignacio 24-6 Chiefs, Keith 27-13, Cheeto Freak Chiefs 8-0, all safeties. Wouldn't that be something?
I appreciate about Brendan 55-0. The confidence is overwhelming.
Wow, I love it. We got Jaden 26-7. Mike says 34-6. Henny will have 5 touchdowns. I hope so, man, because that means Mahomes probably had 5 touchdowns before that. Boy, that would be a fun game to watch. I know I'll be drinking KC beer this weekend. If you guys could do us a favor, at KC Beer Co. on Twitter, give them a shout. Just hop on there. Just do us a favor right now. Let them know you heard about their beer on the Arrowhead Addict podcast just now. And if you want to thank them for sponsoring, appreciate that. And of course, buy KC beer, drink it. It's going to be you're going to be seeing a lot of it here in the next few weeks on this one.
See, John Satterfeld coming in 75-3. Also, I see you, Reyes. You want Verderame off the show. You must be a family member,
right?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably on my uncle back home. So listen, I understand. There are some days I don't want to hear me either, but it is what it is. I hate to break that, but I hear you. But hey, listen, it'll be interesting Saturday, and then we'll have the post game show right after the game.
Yeah, we'll be here on Saturday right after the game, so make sure you check that out. I think Sterling Holmes will be back with us, perhaps Matt Connor, and then you can enjoy your Sunday and just kind of watch how the rest of the things play out and get ready for the playoffs. No SSE lives right next to KC Beer. That'd be trouble for me.
There you go,
living right next to a brewery. We'll come down and see you when we get back to Kansas City. Thank you, Gaming Bros. Appreciate you.
Yes. Appreciate it.
Listen, everybody. This is the last, this is the last game of the season. Enjoy it. It's the Broncos. It's a divisional game. I'm going to throw something on the smoker. I don't know yet. A brisket, a pork butt. I got a bunch of stuff down there in the freezer. I got to start the thaw right now. But yeah, give us a shout on social media. Let us know what you're drinking for the game. Hopefully it's KC beer. Let us know what you're eating, making some ribs. I'm always down for some recipes. It's cold here in Chicago. God almighty. Is it cold? Yeah,
it's about negative 100, it feels like.
Yeah. I did a twice smoked ham on my smoker. It was delicious, but all I had to do was go out there every once in a while, to check on it and stuff. And it was brutal, absolutely brutal, just to even step out of my house. So looking forward to staying in, watching some Chiefs football. All right, everybody, we will be back on Saturday football, and it's not college. It's the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos. For Matt Verderame, my name is Patrick Allen. Thank you so much for your support. We'll see you on Saturday. And as always, go Chiefs.